What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another post-game show here on Mets Central. This is Mets fan reaction game 41, where the New York Mets defeat the Chicago Cubs by a score of 6-2 and take the series W against the Cubs by winning 2 out of 3. And look, this is a very big series to win. This is a very big series to win because, as you guys know from the past podcast that we've done, you know, we've been reviewing past series where the Mets have recently dropped a couple series or either tied. I mean, if you guys recall, after the 7-0 run where the Mets swept both the Cardinals and the Phillies back to back to go on that 7-0 homestand, the next couple series they went and struggled, as they dropped or not dropped, but they tied the series in Washington 2-2 against the Nationals. They then came back home, lost the series to Arizona 2-1. They then went on the road to St. Louis, dropped that series 2-1. So they had been struggling, but then obviously they go to Arizona, they win that series 2-1, and then they come home to New York at Citi Field and obviously play a 3-game series against the Cubs. And we talked about on the podcast that with the way the hitting was recently and the way the pitching kind of was a little bit average recently, we were kind of a little bit worried because, as you guys know, the Chicago Cubs, are one of the most deadliest offenses right now in Major League Baseball, and they're one of the top ranked offenses. So, one of the keys, obviously, that we pointed out, when we were doing our podcast was if the Mets wanted to win the series, one, the pitching for the most part had to be solid, and two, the bats had to come and play and hit on the level that the Cubs are going to. Now, the pitching for the most part in the series was very good, apart from game two, where you see both McGill and Craddock struggled. Obviously, we'll get into that more as we do the podcast tomorrow. Um, but yeah, for the most part, the pitching in game one, very solid. Good start by Clay Holmes. And then today, Griffin Canning goes and takes the mound, and Griffin Canning was very, very good. He was excellent. And once again, I mean, this is Griffin Canning's seventh or eighth start, I think, and he has like a 2.36 ERA. I mean, talk about just gems. Just talk about finding gems in the rough. I mean, what the Mets have done with Griffin Canning so far has been no doubt next to just unbelievable. I mean, the way they transformed him into a solid, reliable pitcher. I mean, and we've talked about this where, obviously when the Mets start to get healthy and they get, Mania back and when they get Frankie Montas back, the plan for Griffin Canning is most likely going to be going back into the bullpen as a long man. And I still think that is the plan, don't get me wrong, because I think that's where his best attributes are going to suit him. But he's making a serious case right now to keep himself in the starting rotation. Now, I mean, look, this is a good problem to have, right? Because you guys know the old cliche saying in baseball, you can never have enough pitching. And right now, if the Mets are going to get really good production out of Griffin Canning, and they're going to have to, give Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns that tough decision on, who to send to the bullpen when guys like Mania and Montes comes back, that's only a good problem for the Mets to have. So obviously, we'll get to that bridge. We'll get to that bridge when we cross it. But as of now, it's a very good problem to have, and I am for one not complaining. The offense, on the other hand, today, you know, sure they put up they put up the 6 runs and win this game, but the offense was still not great per se. And I know people say, "Oh, but the Mets put up 6 runs." What are you talking about? Yes, but it's kind of more the same that we saw last year, where they'll have like they'll struggle to score for the most part. And I know they had 2 runs um before obviously the huge eighth inning. But like I said, it's more of what we saw last year where, the Mets would struggle to get runs early in the game. And then they would have that one big inning where they get a multitude of runs and that ends up winning the game. Now, listen, that's cool. I'll take that. But I think as a long term consistency thing, I think that's something that the Mets have to, obviously work on and smooth that out. Now, I know that's down to Eric Chavez. And as you guys know, me and Evan, we are both not big fans of Eric Chavez. We would want him to get fired. But as of right now, that's probably not going to happen. So they're just going to have to figure it out. I don't know if they will. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. But yeah, and also before we get into the official breakdown, I just want to apologize to you guys. Sorry that the post game is going up a little bit late. As you guys know, me and Evan, we just came back from a wedding, so we kind of had a busy day. A long day of planes being delayed like 4 times today, and we came back home. I was a bit tired. I had to do some stuff. I crashed out. I slept. So apologies to that. Post game is obviously going up right now. But yeah, that's the only reason why, if you guys had any questions and wondering why the post game show was so late in terms of going up. But yeah, other than that, I mean, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe as always. We greatly appreciate you guys' support here on the channel, and we want to keep feeding you guys content throughout the rest of the season. So as long as you guys keep subbing and leaving that like button on these videos and live streams, then we're gonna keep on pushing through and doing it for the rest of the season. But yeah, let's now officially get into the actual game breakdown. So obviously for the Mets, Griffin Canning on the mound, and on the mound for the Chicago Cubs, Matthew Boyd. Top of the first inning, very good inning from Griffin Canning as he would strike out the side by striking out Pete Crow Armstrong, Kyle Tucker, and Seiya Suzuki. Bottom of the first, as well as a 1-2-3 inning from Matthew Boyd. He retired the side as well. Lindor strikes out, Soto strikes out, and Pete Alonso strikes out as well. Top of the second, another 1-2-3 inning from Canning, and Bush flies out. Carson Kelly strikes out, and Nico Horner pops up. Bottom of the second, Mark Vientos would pop out. Nimmo would strike out on a foul tip. Stalling Marte would be hit by pitch. And then Luis Torrens, who, again, has been coming up clutch after clutch after clutch in these huge hitting situations. He comes through with an RBI triple as he brings in Stalling Marte. So the Mets take an early 1-0 lead. Luis Acuna would then line out to end the inning. Top of the third, Dansby Swanson would lead off with a single. Justin Turner would then walk. John Birdie would then fly out. Pete Crow Armstrong would then strike out, and then Kyle Tucker would ground out to end the inning. So very good work by Griffin Canning to obviously get out of that jam after giving up the leadoff single to Swanson and walking Justin Turner. Bottom of the third, Tyrone Taylor would pop out. Francisco Lindor would then single. Then Juan Soto would ground into an inning-ending double play. Top of the fourth, Seiya Suzuki would ground out. Michael Bush grounds out, and Carson Kelly would line out to end the inning. So very good 1-2-3 inning from Griffin Canning. Then we move on to the bottom of the fourth. Pete Alonso would strike out. Mark Vientos would ground out. Brandon Nimmo would then single. Marte would then single. So first and second for the Mets with 2 outs. Unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to come through as Luis Torrens would fly out to end the inning. Top of the fifth, 1-2-3 inning again from Griffin Canning as he would get Nico Horner to ground out. Dansby Swanson would ground out. And Justin Turner would ground out to end the inning. We then move on to the bottom of the fifth as Luis Acuna starts off the inning with a leadoff single. Tyrone Taylor would pop out. Then Matthew Boyd would make a very nice pickoff move as he would pick off Luis Acuna at first base, and then Francisco Lindor would strike out the inning. Top of the sixth, John Birdie would fly out to center field. Then Griffin Canning, he was perfect for the most part until this part where Pete Crow Armstrong, and this was something that I was definitely worried about this series that Pete Crow Armstrong would go up against the Mets, but for the most part the Mets did keep him in hold, but they couldn't have this at bat as Griffin Canning leaves throws a fastball up and in, but Pete Crow Armstrong was able to get around it as he would hit a home run to right field to top the game at 1-1. Then an injury delay as Francisco Alvarez would come in to replace Luis Torrens, and he would take a foul ball off the family jewels. So hopefully Luis Torrens is all right. I think he should be, but definitely a little shaken up after taking the baseball off of that area because we all know that definitely hurts. Then Kyle Tucker would ground out to end the inning, and then Seiya Suzuki would ground out as well to end the inning. So a very good start from Griffin Canning as he would go 6 innings. And his final line score: 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 5 Ks, 1 home run. Obviously, that being to Pete Armstrong, lowers his season ERA down to a 2.36 ERA. And I mean, just overall, when you look at the overall the pitching breakdown, Griffin Canning, he kind of went more back to being fastball reliant. As you guys recall, the last couple games, we start to see Canning start to go more heavy in terms of the breaking stuff and going away from the fastball, which is something that we saw earlier in the season, especially with his first couple starts. But sorry guys, but this start Canning would obviously go back more to being a more four seamer reliant. And in total, when you look at the pitching breakdown on Baseball Savant, 38 four-seamers thrown, 32 sliders thrown, 17 changeups thrown, and 5 knuckle curves thrown. In terms of the swings and whiffs, 14 swings and 2 whiffs on his fastball, 18 swings and 5 whiffs on the slider, which is something you liked, which is something you'd love to see. Then on the changeup, 11 swings, 5 whiffs, love to see it as well. Knuckle curve, 2 swings, 1 whiff. In terms of the actual pitching velos, maxed out at 95 on the fastballs, and averaged about 93.7. So ultimately, another very good start from Griffin Canning. And like we were saying, like, this is just what David Stearns in the pitching lab does. They go out there, they find these gems, and again with Canning, he was excellent. He was excellent today. So as for Griffin Canning, he's just got to keep up doing what he's doing. Now, I'm not expecting him, every start to go out there and give you 6 innings and 1 run ball, especially, against a dangerous lineup like the Cubs at a consistent rate. But, if he's just going to go out there and consistently give you 6 innings of 2 to 3 run baseball, maybe 4 on his worst days, then that's something you obviously take. Because, again, this is a guy that's making $4.5 million. And as of right now, he is exceeding his contract value by a ton. So, very good start by Canning, and just got to keep on doing what he's doing. But then, obviously, we go to the bottom of the 6th. Juan Soto would strike out swinging. Pete Alonso would strike out on a foul tip. But then Mark Vientos would come through. He'd hit a home run to left field to put the Mets up 2-1. Brandon Nimmo would be hit by a pitch, and then Starling Marte would pop out the end of the inning. Top of the 7th, Reed Garrett will come in to replace Griffin Canning, and definitely not one of Garrett's better outings. He wasn't terrible, but he definitely did struggle a little bit. He would obviously walk Michael Busch. Then Carson Kelly would ground out. Nico Horner would then hit a double to left field. Michael Busch would come around to score to tie up the game at 2. He would then get Dansby Swanson to line out, and then Justin Turner would line out at the end of the inning. So, as I said, not a great outing from Reed Garrett. Wasn't terrible. I mean, look, the thing with Reed Garrett is, and, we've talked about this multiple times here on the show and on post-game shows and podcasts, like, guys like Reed Garrett, they've been very good, but they're not going to be perfect. Like, there's going to be times where they have, rough outings and they give up runs. So, but this is just where the offense has to come through. Now, thankfully, later in the game, they would come through. But as we said, Reed Garrett, while he's been excellent so far, he's not going to be perfect throughout every single, pitching appearance that he has. So it is what it is. He only gave up the 1 run, but thankfully he was able to get that inning. Top of the 7th, Brad Keller comes in to replace Matthew Boyd. Francisco Alvarez would lead off the inning with a single. Luisano Acuna, unfortunately, would ground into a double play, and then Tyrone Taylor would strike out to end the inning. Top of the 8th, then Ryan Stanek would come in to replace Reed Garrett. And Ryan Stanek is a guy that, if you guys recall a couple weeks ago, especially with the National Series, this was a guy, Ryan Stanek, that, had come out of the circle of trust and was struggling. But I'm telling you guys right now, with his last couple of appearances, Stanek is starting to earn his way back into the circle of trust, as he had another excellent pitching outing today, as he would get a 1-2-3 inning, as he would strike out John Birdie, would strike out Pete Crow Armstrong, and then we get Kyle Tucker to fly out as well. His fastball velo was very good, topped out at 100 miles an hour, a couple times on the fastball. So that's something you'll have to see from Ryan Stanek, and hopefully, he can keep on his production going. Then we move on to the bottom of the 8th. Porter Hodge comes in to replace Brad Keller, and then Francisco Lindor, the captain, the unofficial captain, but we all know he's the captain, the MVP, the National League MVP runner-up of last year, and a guy who's been off to an excellent start this year. He comes through with a leadoff home run to give the Mets a 3-2 lead, to right center field with a very nice bat flip as well. And Francisco Lindor, this is just what he does. He comes through clutch. He comes through, clutch. He comes through time after time after time with clutch hits like that. So very nice to see from Francisco Lindor. Juan Soto would then line out. Pete Alonso would then double. Mark Vientos would then come through again, as he would hit an RBI single to drive in Pete Alonso to make it 4-2 Mets. Jose Azocar would then come in to replace Mark Vientos as a pitch runner. Gavin Hollowell will come in to replace Porter Hodge. And then Brandon Nimmo comes up, and Brandon Nimmo has started to hit recently. He comes through with a 2-run home run to put the Mets up 6-2. Then Jeff McNeil comes in to replace Starling Marte as a pinch hitter. McNeil pops out. Alvarez singles, and then Acuna grounds out to end the inning. Then we head to the top of the 9th. Brett Beatty replaces Jose Azocar playing third base. McNeil remains in the game as a designated hitter, and Edwin Diaz comes in to replace Ryan Stanton to try to close out the game. And Edwin Diaz, we start to see it. We start to see it his last couple outings, and we saw in the game yesterday, even though the Mets lost. But Edwin Diaz is starting to look like the Edwin Diaz of old, where he's going out there, he's throwing strikes, he's making the innings look pretty much effortless. He's not putting guys on base at a consistent clip, and this is the Edwin Diaz that the Mets need to have. So obviously he comes into it, gets Seiya Suzuki to ground out, gets Michael Busch to ground out, and then gets Carson Kelly to ground out to end the ball game. So as I said before at the top of the post game show, very good win by the Mets. Very good series win by the Mets as well, as now they are 26-11. They currently hold a 1.5 game ahead of the Phillies, who again won today. So it's a tight race. The Mets obviously just have to keep on winning ball games. Obviously, we would want the style of play to keep on improving, especially with the hitting wise, because the pitching for the most part has been very good. But definitely, still the hitting needs to be cleaned up in terms of certain aspects of hitting with runners in score position and overall just spreading out the offense throughout the rest of the games. But obviously now the Mets stay at Citi Field, as now they host the Pittsburgh Pirates for a 3-game set. Paul Skeens against David Pearson tomorrow at 7:10 at Citi Field. So obviously we'll see what happens, and we'll talk about more of that series on the post game show tomorrow. I'm sorry, on the podcast tomorrow, as well as breaking down this series against the Chicago Cubs. So we'll see you guys later. Yeah, so obviously keep a lookout for the podcast tomorrow. But yeah, see you guys later, and yeah, let's go Mets, baby.